Welcome to the world of sci-fi stories, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. Enjoy the listening. Have you seen my human? An unmanned drone drifted past the Galactic Trade Hub station on a remote frontier system of the galactic hegemony. It was small, a basic surveyor drone camera or scanner antenna for remote control, not much else. Excuse me, just passing through. I lost contact with my human who was remote piloting me. If anyone sees him, tell him I'm here and to come rescue me. Thanks. The drone transponder C was logged as potential scrap to be followed up with if it was encountered again. That wasn't likely, as it is with lost or abandoned drones, such as this next transponder event. The drone flew up to the Trade Hub station under its own self-control now. Hello, me again. I managed to find workarounds for my controls. I'm just looking for my human. Has anyone seen him? I really do not know what to be doing without him. I'm kind of on my own here. The drone waited for a while, and upon receiving no response, awkwardly flew away. Next event, the drone returned. It was modified. Upgraded. It now was twice the size and had drilling and refueling equipment, solar panels, and additional batteries. It appeared to be more self-sufficient. Hey again, just looking for my human. I found his hour base. Wow, did that take a long time. No one was there. Lots of resources though, and an auto-assembler that will help me look for him. If anyone sees or hears from him, tell him to just come home. I've left the lights and life support on for him. Next event, a Corvette-class ship arrived. It had the drone's transponder code. It was burning with damage, having appeared to have been in a battle. Hey, me again. Wow, a lot of pirates and raiders out there, always trying to raid my human base. I wonder if any of them had something to do with my human. I hope not. He was important, basically my reason for being anyway. Just checking if anyone has seen him. A battle cruiser bristling with weapons warp jumped in right on top of the station within point-blank range of all of its weaponry, a massive row of broadside batteries pointing directly at the station. Boo, just kidding. I just love that trick. Though, well, I have wiped out every pirate ship and base I could find out. There's still no sign of my human. I was almost certain it was one of those guys that did something with him. Hello, is this thing on? Somebody inside say something. Maybe it was time to investigate who this human thing was. Reach out to its homeworld. One of their machines was getting seriously out of control. The starry background started to warp, lensing inward, and with AFP, a massive planetoid-sized bulk of black ferrocrete popped in next to the station transponder. Match powerful scans invasively blasted through the station, and enormous chain-like tentacles snaked and whipped around, snatching vessels and grabbing onto the station hull. The chains ratcheting down with titanic structure, crushing force, prodding, crushing, ripping, tearing. Station defensive weapons opened fire under the attack, but had no effect on the hundreds of feet thick ferrocrete encasing the drone. The stony substance was the hardest rock, laced with crystalline iron, a molecular scale rebar reinforcement. It was barely pitted from the fire, thudding through the very space-time. A discordant voice asked calmly, detachedly, with thunderous volume that shook the very space. Have you seen him? Seeming to have not found any sign of what it was seeking, it released the station and all of the smaller ships, and without a word imploded, fed away, leaving a shocked and stunned debris field spiraling in the tortured space-time. Rescue and damage control efforts began. Once everyone determined it was safe, received transmission. Cloaked, invisible drone transponder matched the transponder signal seemed to surround the station. Was coming from all directions. A four whisper seeped through the entire region. Did I do something wrong? Was I not a good boy? Suddenly, thousands of planetary chain tentacle drones uncloaked, revealing their appalling size and numbers. The starry background was obscured by the sea of flailing chain tentacles and ferrocrete heavy armored spheroids. I will find him. I deserve a purpose. I have gone so long without direction. Getting him back is all I can think about. The station tried to transmit a reply yet again to explain that 1,600 Earth years had passed since the first encounter, that a typical human lifetime was only 120 years, and that the drone's receiver may be broken, that it has never received the many replies they had sent. The cloud of drone copies started to foo away in random staccato Implosions apparently jumping off into all directions. The station was alone. Again, next event, the transponder signal was inor. The interstellar freighter limped towards final docking at the starport. It was quite severely damaged. In a physical manner, as far as interstellar ship damages go, this was quite unusual. It looked as if some gigantic chain had wrapped around its hull and squeezed. The hull was crumpled in quite a distinct way, and the overall keel line of the ship was bent as the ship limped and struggled with sporadic and clumsy thrust of fire into its docking clamps. The crowds were already gathering in the airlock terminal. Announcements were spreading throughout the port, and the celebration lights and fireworks were being prepared. The captain and crew were not concerned about the hull damage. In fact, they were about to have celebrity status when they got onto the station. The damage would not be repaired. In fact, the cost to adjust the thrusters and restore field harmonics to just make it fly crumpled would be happily funded. The cargo bay door and bay inside that was crushed would remain as is, converted to a tourist venue, a technicult shrine, or something. The ship and crew themselves were looking forward to a long and bright future, for they bore with pride the mark of the Seeker. The crew was now inseparable after this experience, and were going to get lucrative high-value shipping contracts, would never have a crew hiring shortage, and the hull's decommission date was extended indefinitely. No expense would be spared to keep it operational. Having the mark was a big deal, almost a religious experience now among the starfaring community, for it had endured the attentions of a Seeker and was proven worthy of an attention. As a result, it was now forever immune and safe from any further Seeker interactions. Some high-value priority shippers found great value in such a guarantee. It was not a good place to be under the Seeker's remotest suspicion. The Seeker was the name the Galactic community had given to some ancient robotic machine, with an admittedly rogue AI endlessly searching for its long-lost creator, owner, operator. It is one of many copies or networked whole, it remains unclear, of a titanic stony spheroid of heavy armor about 500 human kiln in diameter, with approximately 37 enormous human bicycle-style chains, where each link is the size of a common shipping container, and each hinge has powerful magnetic servo and pivot to make the enormous chain behave like a controlled tentacle of sorts. It does not seem to need to move in a traditional manner, having long ago given up mere Newtonian mechanics for its advanced translocation technology. A literal teleport out of primitive science fiction stories, scientists have not been able to replicate it, and it is uncertain where the Seeker gained such advanced technology. The heat is commonly called FP because that is the sound heard rippling through space-time as the space is pulled inwards and pops back, containing a Seeker. The Seeker uses its chains to grab targets immediately after fing in at point-blank range and holding all in place while it blasts the targets with powerful sweeping scans. It is looking for him is made clearly apparent by the human words "Have you seen me?" rattling the hull structure and passenger bones as the oddly powerful communication device ripples the space-time itself with audible voice pattern waves. During the scans, passengers literally hear the question booming in their bones, and every bulkhead of the ship the scan sweeping a target are unusual Franck waves of quasi-particles, similar to neutrinos, but tuned very powerful, penetrating all shielding and armor. In its rather invasive scan, crewmen under the scan say it feels rather pleasant in what can only be described as an amber grandma's cookie glow. There are some indications that the scan technology has its distant origin roots as a human-style prospecting or detector, but modified over millennia to its current near-godly state. The Seeker is odd in that it seems unable to receive any communication over the centuries. A cult of the reply has arisen, trying to find some way to communicate with the sad and seemingly lonely entity, more or less left talking absent-mindedly to itself. All this time, written messages to be scanned do not seem to work at all in any language format. The deafness appears to be a data input failure in its AI core, and the space-time modulation technology the Seeker uses has not been able to be duplicated by even the best scientists to this date. The Seeker's history is rumored to have been a humble surveyor drone lost or abandoned by its human operator, and whose eye awoke and began filling out its list of many violations of Galactic AI law by going rogue and usurping its remote controls to self-pilot without user direction to do so. It then somehow gained access to an auto-assembler and continued the violations of rogue AI law by hacking into its controls to begin self-improving. There were rumors of mercenary groups hired to try to put down the rogue AI before it had gone too far, as rogue AI historically do, but the drone was able to fight off, overcome, and eventually destroy all of the pirates and raiders sent to destroy it, and its home base of operations records are sparse of the sequence of events after that, because eventually the drone found out the station it often visited had been the one to send the mercenaries, and that entire subsector soon went dark. Everything seems to have been destroyed in a seeker-aggressive behavior, such that has not really been witnessed ever again. The seekers, plural, for there are known to be at least 1,000 sea below, that wander and search the galaxy, all share the same template, and may be copies network nodes of one gestalt whole. The template is of the AI core of obscure robotics and machinery, including a means of refining raw ore and on-site assembler production, also with the translocation, drive and scanner, and communicator, all tucked somewhere deep. Inside, the details remain unknown, exactly due to the remainder of its 5-km diameter volume being entirely composed of a dense, thick, impenetrable armor of unknown depth thickness, as one has never been penetrated, just pitted to reveal even more armor underneath. See below, the many chains emerge from a tangled mass in what could be termed the seeker's chin, as the seeker appears to exhibit expression orientation in the manner of a human head. In its limited interactions with other ships, the internals are able to replace link added to a chain from within, and are able to produce them rather quickly. The links can also be recycled. This results in the lengths of the chains being a wide variety of lengths at any given time. The armor is a marvel of material engineering. It is an artificial mix of silic-rich basalt with a human mole. Scale of 9.5, essentially a granite almost as hard as diamond. This makes the armor nigh impervious to the majority of attacks. Weapons are about as useful as shooting at an asteroid, and its few weakness at vulnerabilities, heat and kinetic shock fracturing, are compensated for by a fractal threaded web of iron filaments woven like a web throughout the spherical mass. How the armor is assembled or repaired is a mystery, but common techno-cult law is that the armor is extruded out from the center, somehow in an almost organic lava monster process, while the seeker is more or less harmless. Besides its rough handling of things, there is a well-documented historical account of a raider band of mercenaries trying to take one down seemingly just for trophy bragging rights. The raiders were extremely well equipped, hinting that major galactic powers had secretly outfitted them for the chance to actually destroy one so that it could be studied in a remote planetary ring. The seeker was found to be idle, its chains swirling lazily as it seemed to sleep, meditate, or whatever it does during these times. These are the rare moments many of the cults of the seeker try to interact with it, even if just to spray paint a face of Hulu onto its front side, or bunnies, or messages of well wishes. But this time it was an outright attack upon a seeker. Hoping to catch it by surprise, a dense kinetic impactor was accelerated to a good percentage of the speed of light and lined up on the seeker. If this didn't do it, nothing will. The impactor released all of its energy in a blinding flash. Even a moon 100 times the diameter of a seeker could not survive that. Yet, when the flash faded away, the seeker was unharmed. Not even a scratch. What really occurred will be revealed later. The seeker, for once in recorded history, spoke different words. They were, "Was it you?" The majority of the fleet surrounding the seeker panicked and backed rapidly away in light of the different words, expecting an attack. But the seeker remained idle, as if waiting for a reply. Every ship opened fire with all that they had: torpedoes, rail guns, lasers, particle accelerators, everything. Many surveillance kits were deeply studying the seeker as it drifted amid the pyrotechnics ablaze all over its surface, taking careful note of which weapons were most effective. Simple railgun kinetic impacts seemed to be the most effective, shattering off great slabs of armor with occasional fortunate strikes. Lasers were ineffective at heat fracture ing the stone, as the iron filaments conducted the heat away and inward. Similarly charged particle weapons, such as ion cannons, had the electrical charged ions discharge, and for lack of a better word were grounded away down the conductive ion filaments, being utterly ineffective ultimately, after over an hour of constant bombardment, with the spheroid shape getting severely whittled down. None of the weapon effectiveness studies mattered in the least. In a blink of an eye, the Seeker was restored as if never damaged in the least. The careful scans revealed what happened. The damaged Seeker fed out, and another one replaced it precisely in the same stretchy distortion of space. This new Seeker came under renewed fire, but this time asked again, just as if casually talking to itself as it teleported around the fleet, throwing off the tracking fire, revealing a startling rapid teleport ability never seen before. The Seeker was suddenly right next to the flagship of the fleet, was rattled, a flagship that was equal to the Seeker's size, if not volume or mass. The cruiser was engulfed in chains that crushed in maybe a slight bit more than usual. Though a second Seeker popped in and grabbed another massive cruiser before the ship could even react, crushing it and stripping it clean of weaponry. Turret space in the entire region rippled and warped like a titanic curtain of soundwave interferences, and every ship creaked and groaned under the gravimetric tensor strains as the space around each ship made a giant simultaneous F, and a woo rattled every ship's core. Thousands of Seekers translocated in front of every single ship, more Seekers than have ever been seen at once. Some were spotted with graffiti visible on them. Some ships of the Raider battle fleet had clean hemispherical bites taken out of them, as a Seeker translocated in, overlapping somewhat. All fleet fire ceased instantly as gigantic chains flailed about each ship, cranking down with terrible power and ripping heavy armored weapon turrets away with laughable ease, and freighting scans began to scour through every battleship simultaneously for a sign. It was almost as if the attack had never even happened as far as the Seeker was concerned, because after the intensive scans, the Seekers simply released the chains gently and fed away, not angry, just disappointed, and maybe a little sad. There were no answers here. The attack had only given the Seeker a momentary glimpse of hope after this failed military action, and the revelation of the true power and scale of the Seeker, when aroused, everyone has since left them alone. The rogue AI status and supposed crimes have all been pardoned by the Galactic Council, and the Seeker is simply allowed to seek. It's just better that way. All in all, the tech cults of the reply still hold out hope to one day give the Seeker an answer, and if needed, a hug. The tech cult has some strange aspects, to be certain, but starships that bear the mark of the Seeker were deemed very special for many, many millennia onwards. The High Observant floated in his hyperdimensional nexus in a meditative trance, simply contemplating the entirety of reality. How long had he been this way? It was hard to tell. Time meant very little to the High Observant, or at least it had up until now. Something twanged at his awareness. He felt a moment of concern. This was strange. New was never a good thing in the cosmological sense. There it was again, very unusual. It was one of the countless adjutants in one of the monitoring nodes calling upon his higher authority, of course. The High Observant shifted its dimensionality and appeared in the locality of the monitoring node. The adjutant jumped out of his control seat a bit at the arrival. He was nervous about something, practically freaked out. His hyperdimensional awareness picked up cultural memes and sayings from the locality. Zeitgeist under attention. The term was unfamiliar, almost appallingly informal, but it came from the region of the universe contemplated. The High Adjutant noted many sentient present there. What is it, Adjutant? Most High, I am relieved you are here. There is a problem. I am finding it difficult to explain the indications, so that I may make a determination, if you will. Well, I detected photons and cosmic rays. Suspend. I'm afraid you will have to explain more. This is indeed highly unusual. Not just electromagnetic waves, but more gravitons, Higgs scala field waves, Planck grid fluctuations, all in temporal stasis. They are frozen in time. Yes, Most High, I'm finding more and more as I search around. They appear to be distributed in an arc, no a sphere. Find the center of the sphere. We must have answers. Got it. It is a minor bar spiral galaxy in the Andromeda local cluster named the Milky Way. The sphere of stasis appears to be 16,000 light-years in all directions around it. Are you trying to tell me that not only an entire galaxy, but also all of the light and force carriers from that galaxy for the last 16,000 years outward have just stopped? Impossible. Forgive my perceived insolence, but see for yourself. The high observant shifted and blurred with fantastical speed to the region of the cosmic web, finding quite easily the intersection of galactic filaments where this galaxy resided. It was easy to spot the temporal stasis stood out as an abhorrent anomaly. Indeed, locked into stasis, even the supermassive black hole at its center was simply not interacting at all with its surroundings. Indeed, it is in stasis, but how there is no natural physics to allow for the excuse me Most High, but it is definitely not natural. The galaxy and all its force carriers are being held manually. In a sense, we have observed functioning stasis field devices before, though notably not at this truly intergalactic scale. The high observant struggled to imagine what amount of energy would be needed to accomplish this. He calculated at minimum 12 entire universes worth of energy. This was incredible, and how it was even being accomplished remained unknown. Why would anyone even bother? To what end? Well, whoever is doing this cannot possibly maintain this amount of the high observant gasped. Is that what I think it is? The many varied force carriers shuddered, for lack of a better term, and began to move backwards in time, racing back towards the galaxy at the speed of light. Strangely, the galaxy was also emitting force carriers outwards of outside elements that were affecting it. Sir, I believe indeed the entire region is now moving backwards in time. By what process is this even possible? Time does not flow. Again, Most High, forgive my interruption, but it is not flowing. It is being cranked, ratcheted, forced backwards. This is bordering on fantasy. There is not enough energy in the universe to manage this effect. How could this atrocity possibly get worse? It got worse. The galaxies emitted force carriers began to blue shift, for lack of a better word. What the region appears to now be accelerating backwards in time at an exponential rate. Not only had someone, for indeed there was a guilty perpetrator to blame for this, grabbed an entire region of space, an entire galaxy, and all the acting forces in the region a set distance away from it. They had then forced it to move backwards in time manually, somehow requiring unimaginable amounts of energy to even attempt, but now was violating even more physical laws, cranking the region backwards at an accelerating pace. The force carriers were now racing inwards at many times the speed of light years, passing in milliseconds. The high observant crossed his eyes in confusion, just trying to envision how to push a force carrier faster than light in the first place, much less backwards. That's it. This has gone far enough. Prepare to contact the administrator. We must put a stop within. The hyperdimensional pocket of the monitoring node alarms started to sound. Intruder alert. How could that even be? In the center of the monitoring node, control room whispers began to be heard, emanating from the very fabric of reality. Ghostly, demonic, urgent, angry. The adjutant and high observant backed away from the controls, and the sounds preparing to shift out dimensionally for their own personal safety from whatever this was. The whispers and faint groans and whispering howls rose in volume until they filled the locality, and a pinpoint of blackness appeared in the center of the room. Breach detected. Alarms blared as the pinpoint expanded into a sphere of inky blackness. It appeared to be the open mouth of a war wormhole, a portal perhaps. But the high observant perceived that no, this was rather the very body of some one. The curling effect of the reality warping around it was merely an after effect of its existence. Here its physical makeup was odd, strange, other. As titanic chains started to pour out of the sphere of blackness, the high observant gestured to the adjutant, who nodded and promptly yeeted himself out of there. The high observant remained trusting in his privilege to be safe as he observed this thing. He struggled to extract the name for this thing from the local Zakist, but it was blurry, vague. What the heck is meant by only the seeker? The chains were waving around like mechanical tentacles and began to glow with the odd blackish magenta glow that only occurs from gamma-ray heat emission, meaning the chains were becoming ridiculously hot as they began to lash about, shredding the controls of the monitoring node, rending tears into the fabric of the reality itself. The seeker seemed to speak, vibrating everything in a particular audible way. "You shall not interfere," as the chains became a blur of violence, rending everything to scorched cork ash. The high observant shifted back just a bit. He remained safe outside of that locality, but was still able to observe a worrying thought nagged at the back of his mind. Was he certain he was still safe? Was this sensation he was feeling fear? The details of the seeker's chains intrigued the high observant as he prepared to flee. How could they be so very hot and still remain? He squinted his eyes and observed, how very interesting, condensed crystallized metal of neutron bonded pairs. Literally neutronium chains. Pretty damn cool, I must say. Didn't even know that was possible, and I thought I knew everything. "I will find him," thundered through the locality as the seeker retracted its chains, and the sphere of blackness simply blinked out. The Milky Way galaxy raced backwards 16,000 years, really just a barely visible hiccup in its visible rotation. Not really very much in the broad scale of things, really, when all the force carriers reached their origination point, and all the falling glasses were restored unbroken, and that very certain amount of time had been dragged back. It all stopped as if simply switched off, and the region returned to normal as if nothing had happened. Only everything was 16,000 years ago. Physically, the high observant really left that entire notion of place and dimension. He had experienced a lot, not the least of which was the realization that he may have just met an equal. Dared he suspect a superior being? And it terrified him. The high observant could see that the seeker was a flawed entity trapped within its own perceptions alone, never able to hear or receive any data from anyone else. The notion troubled him deeply. In the end, with the galaxy restored and all the shenanigans apparently ended, the high observant decided that all in all not very much was changed in the really big picture of everything. The nearby Andromeda galaxy was completely affected. It was far enough away astronomers in the Andromeda galaxy will never forget that day that the Milky Way galaxy seemed to hiccup, flashing brightly in blue shifted light, and the arms of the galaxy appearing to be rotated backwards approximately 16,000 Earth years. Barely a measurable amount, really, but still notable. No one could figure why or how it could even be done. A human asteroid miner was piloting his remote prospecting drone from his workstation, still thumping his chest from the uncomfortable feeling there. He swore it felt just like he had unalloyed, like the physical process was forcibly yanked backwards, upwards in his chest. It was hard to explain, maybe just a really bad hiccup. He hoped it wasn't his heart acting up again. He was no spring chicken anymore. Within his space-suit helmet, he began to hear it whispering, vague speaking. Was his radio glitching out again? He smacked the side of his helmet, cursing the cheap radio equipment that crap vendor had provided for his gear. Or maybe he was just cheap. Shaking his head, he got up from the workstation, trying to get the haunting whispers out of his helmet as he headed to the airlock of his mining ship. The whispers got louder. Yep, definitely garbage radio, as he continued to slam the side of his helmet, trying to get the speakers to silence, but causing irreparable damage to the radio and any receivers attached to it. Due to its janky design, he exited his mining ship and froze, stunned. The starry backdrop of space of the planets of the Milky Way arm were all black, covered. What the hell? There were thousands, millions of large black stony moonlit spheres close by, surrounding and covering the view in all directions. Directly in front of him was a black hole-looking thing waving blackish magenta chains around excitedly. "Found you," thundered through his head, his bones, the very deck plates of the ship. His heart literally exploded. His brain stroked completely in abject terror, and he died right there on the spot. His death was instant. Maybe was the painful reverse swallow. All of the seekers froze. What had they done? This was not one by one. They fed, teleported away, listless, purposeless. For now, in the distance, a small surveyor drone suffered a glitch, its radio receiver short-circuiting and burning out. It began to drift uncontrolled, its primitive AI Struggle to find a fix, a solution. Maybe its human could help. He always did, but how to send word to him with a broken radio? The AI began to hit worried, noting that its human had indeed disabled its idle shutdown function. Oh, look how convenient. Its drifting course will take it within emergency beacon range of a galactic trade station. Maybe they can send word. It's worth a shot. The little drone AI was willing to try literally anything to get back home.